"Don't clear the table, I'll eat the leftovers," said the beggar boy to the waitress. Sarah Johnson has worked for 3 years at the Home Flavor Diner in downtown Philadelphia, serving tables and trying to survive on a salary that barely covers the rent for her small room on the outskirts of the city. Every night, she deals with the exhausting routine of attending to demanding customers under the stern gaze of Mrs. Patterson, the owner known for her harshness with employees and complete intolerance for beggars. It was on one of these busy nights that Sarah was clearing dishes from a table when she felt a gentle touch on her arm. Turning around, she saw a boy of about 12, too thin for his age, wearing a worn-out cap and clothes that had seen better days. "Miss, please don't clear the table yet," the boy said in a quiet voice, almost a whisper. "I'll eat the leftovers." Sarah paused for a moment, holding the tray of dirty dishes. There was something in the boy's brown eyes that touched her deeply. It wasn't just hunger she saw there, but a sadness that seemed too heavy for someone so young. "How did you get in here, kid?" Sarah asked, glancing around quickly to make sure Mrs. Patterson wasn't nearby. "I came in through the back door when the cook went out for a smoke," replied Ethan, nervously adjusting his cap. "I always wait for the customers to leave to see if there's anything left. You can't stay here. If the owner sees you, it'll be trouble for me too." Ethan lowered his eyes but didn't move. Sarah noticed his small hands trembling slightly. She wasn't sure if it was from cold or nerves. "I just wanted a little food. I haven't eaten anything today," he said, without looking up. Sarah's heart tightened. Even with all the struggles in her own life, she couldn't simply ignore the boy's situation. She looked around again and saw that Mrs. Patterson was busy at the register, arguing with a customer about the bill. "Stay here," she whispered to Ethan, "but hide behind that column if anyone comes." Sarah took the dishes to the kitchen and discreetly prepared a plate with what was left, some rice, beans, and a few pieces of meat the customers hadn't finished. When she returned, Ethan was still there, leaning against the wall like a shadow. "Thank you, miss," he said as he took the plate, and Sarah noticed how his eyes lit up for the first time. "What's your name?" Sarah asked, sitting for a moment in the chair beside him. Ethan Parker," the boy replied between hurried bites. "And you?" "Sarah, but you don't have to call me miss, I'm still young." She smiled for the first time that night. "Where do you live, Ethan?" The boy stopped eating for a moment, and his face closed off again. "I sleep in a square nearby, but it's not bad," he said quickly, as if to avoid more questions on the subject. "And your family? Your parents?" Ethan swallowed hard, and Sarah realized she had touched a nerve. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. "My mum, she's not here anymore," Ethan finally said. "She got sick and left a few months ago. Since then, I've been looking for someone." "Who?" "My aunt. My mum always talked about her. Said she had a good heart and worked serving food to people. That's why I come to diners." Sarah felt something strange in her chest, a feeling she couldn't explain. There was something in the boy's story that resonated with distant memories of her own life. "What's your aunt's name?" "I'm not sure. My mum always just called her my little sister. She said she was younger and had brown hair like mine." At that moment, Mrs. Patterson came in from the kitchen, and Sarah quickly stood up. "Ethan, you need to go," she whispered urgently. The boy quickly finished his food, returned the clean plate, and headed for the back exit. "Can I come back tomorrow?" he asked before leaving. Sarah hesitated. She knew she was risking her job, but she couldn't say no. "Come back after 10 at night. That's when it slows down." Ethan smiled for the first time since he'd arrived and waved before disappearing into the darkness of the street. Sarah finished her shift with a troubled mind. There was something about the boy's story that bothered her, but she couldn't put her finger on it. All night she thought about his words regarding the aunt who worked serving food. The next night, Ethan showed up promptly at 10. This time, Sarah had already set aside a more generous plate, with food she'd saved for him during the day. "Did you bring a picture of your mother?" Sarah asked as Ethan ate. The boy stopped chewing and reached into the pocket of his worn-out shirt. From it, he pulled a small, faded photograph protected by a clear plastic sleeve. "It's the only thing I have of her," Ethan said, handing the photo to Sarah. Sarah took the picture, and when she looked at it, she felt the world spin around her. The woman in the photo had familiar features, very familiar. The shape of her eyes, her smile, even the way she tied her hair were traits Sarah recognized. What was your mother's name?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jennifer Parker," Ethan replied, not noticing the change in Sarah's expression. Sarah's legs wobbled, and she had to steady herself against the table. Jennifer was the name of her older sister, who had disappeared from home when Sarah was just 15. Jennifer had gotten pregnant and run away after their parents rejected her for not being married first. "Ethan," Sarah said, her voice nearly vanishing, "did your mother ever live in Charleston?" The boy stopped eating and looked at Sarah curiously. "Yes. She said she grew up in a house near the beach with a younger sister she loved very much but had to leave behind." Sarah couldn't hold back the tears streaming down her face. Ethan dropped his fork, concerned. "Are you okay?" "Ethan," Sarah managed between sobs, "I think I'm your aunt. I'm Sarah Parker. Jennifer was my sister." The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Ethan stared at Sarah with wide eyes, processing the information. Your Aunt Sarah?" "Yes, my boy." Sarah opened her arms and Ethan rushed into them. The two hugged tightly, crying together in the middle of the empty restaurant. "My mum talked about you so much," Ethan said through tears. "She said you were the kindest person in the world and that she regretted every day not coming back for you. Why did she never return home? Why didn't she ever look for me? She was afraid. She said she'd disappointed the family and that you must have been angry at her for leaving." Sarah shook her head, cupping the boy's face in her hands. "I was never angry with her. I spent years searching for your mother. I went everywhere, asked so many people, but I could never find her." "She changed her last name when I was born," Ethan explained. "She was afraid you wouldn't want anything to do with her or me." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Mrs. Patterson had returned to the restaurant and was walking toward them with a stern face. "Sarah, what is this? How many times have I told you I don't want beggars in here?" Sarah quickly stood up, still wiping her tears. "Mrs. Patterson, please let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You're fired. Grab your things and get out of here now." Ethan hid behind Sarah, frightened by the woman's shouts. "Please, he's just a child. I don't care. Leave and take this kid with you." Sarah took Ethan by the hand, and the two walked out of the restaurant under Mrs. Patterson's disapproving gaze. Outside, Sarah knelt in front of the boy. "Ethan, from now on you'll live with me. We're family, and family doesn't abandon each other. But what about your job? You lost it because of me. We'll find another job. What matters is that we found each other." Sarah took Ethan to her small room on the outskirts of Philadelphia. It was a simple space with just a bed, a small wardrobe, and an improvised kitchen in the hallway. Ethan looked around with wide eyes. "Is this where you live?" "Yes. And now it's your home too," Sarah said, making a makeshift bed on the floor for Ethan. Over the next few days, Sarah searched for a new job, but discovered her dismissal had spread among the local restaurants. Mrs. Patterson had shared her version of the story, painting Sarah as a troublesome employee. Sarah's savings lasted only 2 weeks. Ethan, sensing the difficult situation, suggested going back to the streets so he wouldn't be a burden. "Don't even think about it," Sarah said firmly. "We'll get through this together. I won't lose you after finally finding you." One morning, Sarah found an envelope slipped under the door. Inside were $200 and a note. "For the kind-hearted woman, from a friend." Ethan was still asleep when Sarah opened it. She looked around, confused, trying to imagine who could have left it there. In the following weeks, Sarah managed to find temporary work at street markets and small shops, but nothing that paid enough to support them properly. Ethan, who had started attending a nearby public school, came home every day talking about the struggles he faced because of his worn-out clothes and lack of school supplies. One afternoon, Sarah was returning from another unsuccessful job interview. When she found Ethan sitting on the building stairs, his face bruised. "What happened?" Sarah asked, examining the cut on his lip. "Some kids at school called me smelly and a beggar. When I talked back, they hit me." Anger rose in Sarah's chest, but she took a deep breath before speaking. "Ethan, it doesn't matter what they say. You're worth more than you know. Your mother raised you to be a good person, and that's what counts. Sometimes I think it would have been better if I never met you," Ethan said, lowering his eyes. "Your life was easier before me." Sarah knelt in front of him and gently held his face. "Ethan Parker, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Your mother may be gone, but she left me you, and I'll take care of you no matter what." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. That weekend, Sarah made a tough decision. She took Ethan by the hand and went to Charleston, to the house where she had grown up. It had been years since she'd seen her parents, and she didn't know how they'd be received. The house had peeling paint and an overgrown garden. Sarah took a deep breath before knocking. Her mother, Mrs. Miller, a woman with graying hair and a tired expression, answered. "Sarah," she said, surprised. "Hi, Mom. This is Ethan, Jennifer's son, your grandson." Mrs. Miller looked at the boy with an expression Sarah couldn't decipher. For a few seconds, no one spoke. "What do you want?" asked Mrs. Miller without fully opening the door. "We need help, Mom. I'm out of work, and Ethan needs medical care. Jennifer brought shame to this family. I want nothing to do with her." Ethan hid behind Sarah, hurt by the words of the grandmother he'd just met. "Mom, he's a child, your grandson. He's no grandson of mine. My grandchildren would come from a decent marriage." Just then, Mr. Miller, Sarah's father, appeared at the door. The nearly 70-year-old man looked at Ethan curiously. "Who's the boy?" "He's Jennifer's son, Dad." "Ethan." Mr. Miller fell silent for a moment, looking into his grandson's eyes. Sarah saw something shift in the man's face, an emotion he was trying to hide. "Helena, let them in." "William, you know very well." "Let them in," he repeated more firmly. Inside the house, Ethan looked around curiously while Sarah and her parents talked in the kitchen. "How's Jennifer?" asked Mr. Miller. Sarah swallowed hard before answering. "She passed away a few months ago, Dad. She got sick and didn't make it." Mrs. Miller collapsed into a chair, covering her face with her hands. Despite all the resentment she carried, the news of her daughter's loss hit her hard. "Why did she never come back?" she asked through tears. "She thought you wouldn't forgive her," Sarah explained. "She carried that guilt her whole life." Mr. Miller walked over to Ethan, who was staring at an old photo on the wall. "That's your mother when she was about your age," the grandfather said, pointing to one of the children in the picture. Ethan smiled at the image of his young mother. "She was pretty." "Yes, she was, and very stubborn," Mr. Miller said with a sad smile. "Just like you from what I can see." Before they left, Mr. Miller pulled Sarah aside and discreetly handed her $300. "Don't let the boy go without," he whispered. "And come back next week." "What about Mom?" "Your mother needs time. She's hurt and stubborn. But bring the boy back." On the way back to Philadelphia, Ethan asked if they'd return to see his grandparents. "We will. Your grandfather liked you. And my grandmother." Sarah sighed before answering. "Your grandmother's been hurting for many years, but maybe with time she'll find a way to forgive." Back at the apartment, Sarah used her father's money to buy medicine for Ethan, who had developed a persistent cough, and some basic school supplies. Over the next week, Sarah kept looking for work. That's when she ran into Michael, an old customer from the restaurant where she used to work. The man was a doctor and remembered how kindly Sarah had always treated him. "Sarah, what are you doing here in the health clinic line?" Sarah briefly explained the situation, and Michael offered to examine Ethan for free. In the office, after several tests, the doctor explained that the boy was malnourished and needed urgent nutritional care. "It's nothing serious, but it needs to be treated now," Michael explained. "I'll prescribe some vitamins and a special diet. and I won't charge for the visits. Doctor, I can't repay you. Sarah, you were always kind to me when I was going through hard times in my marriage. Let me return the favor now. With Michael's help, Ethan began to recover physically. At school, however, things remained tough. One day, Ethan came home with his shirt torn. Another fight? Sarah asked. No, Auntie. I slipped during recess and tore it on the fence. Sarah knew Ethan was lying to spare her worry, but she didn't press the issue. That night, she stayed up mending the shirt, thinking about how she could give her nephew a better life. The next morning, Sarah woke to someone knocking at the door. It was Amanda, her old co-worker from the restaurant. Sarah, how nice to see you. I have a proposal for you. Amanda explained that she had gotten a job at a bigger restaurant downtown, and they needed experienced waitresses. The pay was better, and there was room for growth. But it's far from here, Amanda explained. You'd have to work late, and Ethan would be alone for several hours. Sarah was torn. She needed the money, but didn't want to leave Ethan alone, especially considering the problems he was having at school. Can I think about it? Of course. But let me know by tomorrow because they want someone to start on Monday. That afternoon, Sarah talked to Ethan about the offer. Auntie, you should take it, the boy said. I can take care of myself. You're 12, Ethan. You shouldn't have to take care of yourself. But I want you to accept. It's the opportunity you've been waiting for. Sarah looked at her nephew and saw a maturity that shouldn't exist in someone so young. Ethan had grown up too fast, forced by circumstances to become an adult before his time. The next day, Sarah accepted the job. During her first week at the new restaurant, Heritage Cafe, she impressed the owners with her dedication and experience. The owners, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, were an elderly couple who treated their employees like family. Ethan, in turn, adjusted to the new routine. He came home from school, did his homework, and waited for Sarah to return from work. On weekends, they visited his grandparents in Charleston. Mr. Miller had grown fond of his grandson and always planned special activities for when Ethan visited. Mrs. Miller, little by little, began showing interest in the boy, though she still kept some distance. One day, Mrs. Miller surprised everyone by showing up at Heritage Cafe during Sarah's shift. The woman looked frail and tired. Mom, what are you doing here? I came to talk to you about the boy, Mrs. Miller said, sitting at one of the tables. Sarah served her mother a coffee and sat beside her during her break. The doctor said I'm sick, Sarah. Heart problems. I might not have much time left. Sarah's heart tightened. Mum, let me finish. I spent years angry at Jennifer, thinking she had disrespected me. But now, looking at Ethan, I see her in every little thing he does, and I realize I lost my daughter because of my pride. Mrs. Miller began crying silently. I don't want to lose my grandson too. Can I get to know him better? Sarah took her mother's hand. Of course, Mom. Ethan has always wanted a real grandmother. From that day on, Mrs. Miller became more involved in Ethan's life. She picked him up from school sometimes and spent afternoons telling him stories about his mother when she was little. At Heritage Cafe, Sarah was promoted to supervisor after just 2 months. Mr. Wilson was impressed by her honesty and dedication. Sarah, you have potential for much more than waiting tables, he said one day. Have you ever thought about taking a business course? Mr. Wilson, I barely have time to breathe. How would I take a course? I have a friend who teaches night classes at a technical school nearby. I can talk to him about giving you a special rate. Sarah was tempted but worried about Ethan. And who would take care of Ethan at night? That's when Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Wilson's wife, made an unexpected suggestion. Why don't you bring the boy here? He can do his homework at a back table while you're working. And when you go to class, he can stay with me here at the restaurant. The offer was perfect. Ethan would be safe while Sarah studied, and he'd have Mrs. Wilson's company. She had grown fond of him. That night, Sarah talked to Ethan about the idea. Auntie, you have to study. My mum always said studying was the only way to build a better life. But do you think I can? It's been so long since I've studied. Of course you can. You're the smartest person I know. Sarah enrolled in the business administration course. The first few weeks were tough. She'd come home exhausted after working all day and studying at night. Ethan helped however he could, making simple snacks and organizing her study materials. One day, Ethan came home from school with a paper in his hand and a huge smile on his face. "Auntie, look at this." It was a report card. Ethan had gotten top grades in every subject. "Ethan, I'm so proud of you." Sarah hugged her nephew tightly. "Your mom would have been so proud." "The teacher said I can compete in the school's math Olympiad. Can I?" "Of course you can. Let's even buy some books to help you study." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, back to the story. Over the next few months, Sarah and Ethan's lives began to stabilize. Sarah was doing well in her course, Ethan was excelling in school, and their relationship with their grandparents had improved significantly. Mrs. Miller had become a loving and involved grandmother. She sewed clothes for Ethan and helped him with his studies on weekends. Her heart condition was under control with medication, and she seemed to have found new energy caring for her grandson. Mr. Wilson was so impressed with Sarah's progress that he started teaching her about running the restaurant. He and Mrs. Wilson had no children of their own and saw Sarah as a potential successor to the business. Everything seemed to be going well until a figure from the past walked into the Heritage Cafe. Mrs. Patterson, Sarah's former employer, entered the restaurant during lunch hour. Sarah spotted her first and felt her stomach twist. The woman looked thinner and more worn down than when they'd last met. "Sarah," Mrs. Patterson said, approaching the counter, "I need to talk to you." "Mrs. Patterson," Sarah kept her voice steady, "what are you doing here?" "I came to ask for your forgiveness." Sarah nearly dropped the plate she was holding. Those were the last words she expected to hear from this woman. Forgiveness. "I was sick, Sarah. Not just in body, but in soul. I lost my only son years ago, and since then, I've been a bitter woman. When I saw you helping that boy, I thought of my own son and I couldn't bear it." Mrs. Patterson sat at one of the tables, and Sarah realized she was crying. "I went to the doctor last week. I found out I have a serious illness. It made me think about a lot of things, especially how I treated you and that boy." Sarah sat across from her, still processing the situation. "The boy is my nephew. I found him after years of searching for my sister. Are you both doing all right?" "We are. He's studying and doing really well in school." "That's good," Mrs. Patterson said, wiping her tears. "Sarah, I came here because I want to do what's right. You were an excellent employee and I fired you unfairly. I wrote you a letter of recommendation." Mrs. Patterson pulled an envelope from her purse and handed it to Sarah. "You don't have to, Mrs. Patterson. I already have a job and I'm studying. Then I'm even happier for you. You deserve every opportunity in the world." Before leaving, Mrs. Patterson left a sum of money on the table. "It's for the boy, for his education." Sarah tried to refuse, but the woman insisted. "Let me do this. It's the only way I can make amends." After Mrs. Patterson left, Sarah stood deep in thought. Mr. Wilson, who had overheard part of the conversation, approached her. "Seems like you made quite the lasting impression on that woman. I only did what any decent person would do. Sarah, that's what makes you special. You have a heart that can't ignore the suffering of others." That night, Sarah told Ethan about Mrs. Patterson's visit. "She really apologized?" the boy asked, surprised. "She did, and she left money for your studies." "Auntie, do you think people can really change?" Sarah thought about her nephew's question. She had changed so much since he came into her life. Ethan had changed too, becoming more confident and happy. Even his parents had changed, especially his mother. "I think so, Ethan. When we truly want to, we can change for the better." Months passed, and Sarah finished her technical administration course with excellent grades. Mr. Wilson invited her to become a minority partner at Heritage Cafe. "Sarah, you've transformed this place. The customers like you, the staff respects you, and you understand the business. We want you as our partner." It was an opportunity Sarah never imagined having. With the partnership, she'd have a stable income and could better plan for Ethan's future. Ethan, in turn, had become one of the top students in his school. He competed in the Math Olympiad and placed third in the region. His teacher suggested he apply to a technical high school. "Auntie, I want to study engineering when I grow up," Ethan said one night as they did homework together. "Engineering? Why?" "I want to build houses for people who don't have a place to live, like we didn't before." Sarah smiled, proud of her nephew's compassion. "I'm sure you'll succeed, Ethan. You're so smart and determined." The following weekend, the family gathered at his grandparents' home in Charleston. Mrs. Miller had prepared a special meal to celebrate Ethan's grades. During lunch, Mr. Miller made an announcement that surprised everyone. "Ethan, your grandpa here saved up some money these past months. It's for you to take a prep course when it's time for your exams." Ethan got up from the table and hugged his grandfather, moved. "Thank you, Grandpa. I'll study hard to make you proud." "I'm already proud of you, son. You remind me so much of your mother at your age. She was a hard worker, too." Mrs. Miller, who had been quiet, stood up and went to an old cabinet. From it, she took out a small box. "Ethan, this was your mother's when she was your age." Inside the box were some old books, a rosary, and a photo of the whole family together, including Sarah and Jennifer as children. "Grandma," Ethan said, looking at the photo, "you were a beautiful family." "We were, and we are again," Mrs. Miller said, hugging her grandson for the first time since they'd met. 2 years had passed since that special afternoon. Ethan was about to graduate from middle school, and Sarah had become an experienced manager. Heritage Cafe was thriving, and they had moved to a larger 2-bedroom apartment. Ethan remained an exemplary student and had already been accepted into a technical high school with a full scholarship. Sarah was proud of her nephew, but also worried about the new chapter ahead. "Auntie, I know you're worried about me," Ethan said one night, sensing her unease. "It's just, you'll be studying full-time. We'll have less time to talk. But that's a good thing, Auntie. It means I'm growing up and following the path my mother wanted for me." Sarah smiled, knowing Ethan was right. "Your mother would be so proud of you. And of you too, Auntie. You saved my life when you found me asking for leftovers at the restaurant. You saved mine, Ethan. Before you came, I was just surviving. After you arrived, I really started to live." On the eve of Ethan's graduation, the whole family gathered in Sarah's apartment. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, some of Ethan's school friends, and even Michael, the doctor who had helped them in the beginning, were all there. During the small celebration, Ethan gave a speech that moved everyone. "I want to thank everyone who helped me when I needed it most, especially my Aunt Sarah, who took me in when I was just a lost boy begging for food at her restaurant." "Oh no, sweetheart," Sarah interrupted, laughing. "I was just a waitress. The restaurant belonged to Mrs. Patterson." "To me, it was always yours," Ethan said, smiling, "because that's where our family found each other." On graduation day, Ethan was chosen to speak as the class representative. In his speech, he talked about second chances, family, and how small acts of kindness can change entire lives. "3 years ago, I was a child alone in the world," Ethan said into the microphone, looking at Sarah in the audience. "Today, I'm a young man with dreams and a family who loves me. That was only possible because one person decided not to ignore my cry for help." Sarah cried through the entire speech, remembering the night Ethan had shown up at the restaurant asking for leftovers. After the ceremony, the family went to dinner at Heritage Cafe. Mr. Wilson had prepared a special table for the occasion. "Ethan," Mr. Wilson said during dinner, "I want you to know you'll always have a job here if you need it, to help pay for your engineering studies." "Thank you, Mr. Wilson, but I want to try for a scholarship first." "Of course, son, just know the door is always open." That night at home, Sarah and Ethan talked about their future plans. "Auntie, when I graduate as an engineer, I'm going to build a house for you." "Ethan, I don't need a big house, I just need you close by. But it'll be a special house with a big library for you to study and a porch where we can drink coffee and watch the ocean." "Sounds perfect," Sarah said, hugging her nephew. "And we'll have a space for Grandpa William to work on his wood projects and Grandma Miller to sew. What if they don't want to leave Charleston? Then we'll build 2 houses, one here and one there." Ethan grew up to become the brilliant young man everyone expected. At technical school, he excelled in math and physics. He participated in several student competitions and won scholarships for preparatory courses. Sarah continued to thrive at Heritage Cafe. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson officially made her the majority partner when they decided to retire. Sarah kept the restaurant's name and the tradition of serving quality home-cooked meals. One of the first changes Sarah made as the new owner was creating a program to feed underprivileged children in the area. Every day after closing, the restaurant served free meals to anyone in need. That way, no child has to ask for leftovers, Sarah explained to Ethan on the day the program launched. Ethan, now 17, helped with the program whenever he had free time from school. He had grown into a tall, strong young man, but kept the same kindness and determination he'd had as a child. During his senior year of high school, Ethan applied to 3 different universities for civil engineering. He got into all of them, but chose the one with the best program for affordable housing. "Auntie, I'm going to study engineering focused on social projects," Ethan explained. "I want to help solve the housing problem in the US." "I'm so proud of you, Ethan. Your mother would be overjoyed." On the day of his university enrollment, the whole family went with Ethan. Mrs. Miller, now in stable health and closer to her grandson, couldn't stop crying from emotion. "My grandson in college," she would repeat to anyone who would listen. "My Jennifer's boy in college." Mr. Miller was just as emotional, but tried to hide it. "The family's pride," he said, straightening Ethan's shirt. "Your mother and your aunt did a fine job raising you." During his first years of college, Ethan kept up the habit of helping at the restaurant and the food program. He said it reminded him of where he came from and where he wanted to go. Sarah, meanwhile, expanded the Heritage Cafe. She opened a second location in Charleston near her parents' home and kept the same assistance program running in both restaurants. One day, Ethan came home with exciting news. "Auntie, I was chosen for a university outreach project. We're going to build affordable homes in an underserved community." "That's wonderful, Ethan. When does it start?" "Next month, and guess what? The first house we'll build is for a family with 3 kids who've been living in a tent." Sarah smiled, seeing how Ethan had become exactly the man Jennifer had dreamed he would be. Throughout college, Ethan stood out as one of the top students in his program. He joined several social projects and won awards for his initiatives in affordable housing. Sarah watched her nephew's progress with growing pride. She herself had gone back to school, pursuing a degree in business administration online. "Auntie, you don't have to study anymore," Ethan said one day, seeing Sarah hunched over her books. "Oh, but I do. You taught me it's never too late to learn new things." "I taught you," Ethan laughed. "You sure did. When you showed up asking for leftovers at the restaurant, you taught me we can always start over, and that family is whoever takes care of us." In his final year, Ethan developed a capstone project on sustainable low-cost housing. His work caught the attention of a non-profit focused on affordable homes. "Ethan," his advisor said, "your proposal is innovative. Have you thought about turning this into a social enterprise?" Ethan was excited by the idea, but worried about funding. "Professor, I don't have the money to start a company." "But you know people who believe in you. Have you considered reaching out to impact investors?" That night, Ethan talked to Sarah about the possibility of starting a company dedicated to affordable housing. "Auntie, I really want to do this, but I'm not sure I'm brave enough to take the risk." "Ethan," Sarah said, holding her nephew's hands, "you've spent your whole life taking risks. When you went looking for an aunt you weren't sure existed, you took a risk. When you decided to trust me, you took a risk. When you chose to study instead of just working, you took a risk, and every one of them paid off. But what if it fails? Then you try again. And if you need help, I'll be there. We're family, remember?" With Sarah and his family's support, Ethan turned his academic project into a real company. He connected with impact investors and secured seed funding to build his first housing development. The pilot project was launched in a neighborhood on the outskirts of Philadelphia, the very same place Sarah had lived when Ethan was a child. 20 modest but dignified homes were built using sustainable materials at an affordable cost. "Ethan," one of the new homeowners said on key handover day, "my daughter will finally be able to study in a real house for the first time in her life." Ethan was moved by her words. In that moment, he knew he'd found his life's purpose. Ethan's company, Fresh Start Housing, grew quickly. Within a few years, it had built hundreds of homes across the Northeast. Sarah continued running the restaurants and supporting her nephew's work. She created a microcredit fund to help families benefiting from Ethan's projects develop small businesses. One day, 10 years after that night they met at the restaurant, Ethan showed up at Sarah's house with a special proposal. "Auntie, remember when I promised to build you a house?" "I do. But Ethan, I already have my home, my restaurants. I'm happy as I am. But I want to keep my promise, and I have an idea." Ethan showed Sarah the plans for a community center that combined a soup kitchen, a library, space for vocational training, and a small medical clinic. "It would be like an expanded heritage cafe," Ethan explained, "a place where people could eat, study, learn a trade, and take care of their health, all in one spot." Sarah looked at the plans with shining eyes. "Ethan, this is beautiful, but it must cost a fortune. I've already secured sponsors and partnerships. The city will provide the land, and some organizations will help with equipment. I just need your approval to use your name." "My name?" "The center will be called the Sarah and Jennifer Parker Community Center, a tribute to you and my mother." Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. It was more than she had ever dreamed of. "Of course you can use our names, Ethan. Your mother would be so proud." The construction of the center took 2 years to complete. During that time, Ethan married Jessica, a social worker he met during one of the housing projects. Sarah gained a daughter-in-law she loved as her own. Mrs. Miller and Mr. Miller, now in their 80s, remained active and proud of their grandson. Mrs. Miller had become one of the most dedicated volunteers in Sarah's social programs. "Who would have thought that boy asking for leftovers would become such a successful businessman?" Mrs. Miller remarked one day, watching Ethan oversee the center's construction. "He always had potential," Sarah replied. "He just needed an opportunity and someone to believe in him. And you believed when no one else would. Anyone would have done the same." "No, Sarah. You have a special heart. That's why God put you in each other's paths." The day of the Sarah and Jennifer Parker Community Center's opening was a celebration for the entire community. Hundreds attended, including many families who had benefited from Ethan's projects over the years. During the ceremony, Ethan gave an emotional speech. This center represents the fulfillment of a dream that began one night 15 years ago when a waitress decided not to ignore a boy asking for leftovers. That night changed 2 lives forever, mine and my Aunt Sarah's. Ethan looked at Sarah, seated in the front row with the whole family. "Aunt Sarah, you taught me that family isn't just who you're born with, but who chooses to stay with you. You taught me that a simple act of kindness can change someone's world. And today, seeing this center finished, I can say you didn't just change my life. You changed the lives of hundreds of families who've been helped by all the projects that grew from that first plate of food you gave me." Sarah stepped onto the stage and hugged Ethan as the audience applauded tearfully. "Ethan," she said into the microphone, "the day you walked into that restaurant, I thought I was just feeding a hungry child. Now I understand I was actually planting a seed that grew into a forest of hope." After the ceremony, the family gathered in the center's new restaurant for a special dinner. Ethan announced that Jessica was pregnant with their first child. "If it's a boy, we'll name him William, after his great-grandfather," Ethan said. "And if it's a girl, she'll be named Jennifer, after my mother." Everyone was moved by the tribute. Mr. Miller especially couldn't hide his emotions. "Ethan," said the grandfather, "your mother would be so proud to know her name will live on in the family." "She's still with us in so many ways, Grandpa. Every morning when I wake up, I remember the stories she told me about family and never giving up on dreams." 2 years later, Ethan and Jessica had a daughter, whom they named Jennifer. Sarah became a great aunt and discovered a new dimension of love while caring for little Jennifer. "Aunt Sarah," Ethan said one day, watching her rock his daughter in her arms, "you were born to be a mother and a grandmother." "I think I was born to care for our family," Sarah replied with a smile, "and our family just keeps growing." The Sarah and Jennifer Parker Community Center became a nationwide success story. Ethan received numerous awards for his work in social housing and was invited to speak at universities about social entrepreneurship. Sarah expanded her restaurant chain to 5 locations, all with food assistance programs. She also founded an institute offering free vocational training for at-risk youth. One afternoon, 15 years after that first encounter, Sarah was organizing old photos when she found a picture of Ethan as a child, still thin and wearing worn-out clothes, smiling beside a plate of food at the original restaurant. Ethan, now a successful man and a father, walked into the room and saw the photo. "Remember that day?" Sarah asked. "How could I forget? It was the day my life changed forever." "Mine too, Ethan. Before you, I was lost, without purpose. You gave me a reason to live." "Auntie, can I ask you something I've always wanted to know?" "Of course." "That first night, when you saw me asking for leftovers, what went through your mind?" Sarah thought for a moment before answering. "I saw a child who could have been mine. I thought of my sister, whose whereabouts I didn't know, and I thought, if she ever needed help, I'd want someone to help her the way I was helping you. And now? What do you think when you look back?" "I think sometimes God uses the simplest situations to give us life's greatest gifts. You were my greatest gift, Ethan." Ethan hugged Sarah tenderly. "You were my guardian angel, Auntie. You saved me when I needed it most and taught me it's worth believing in people's kindness." Today, the Sarah and Jennifer Parker Community Center serves over 1,000 people every month. Fresh Start Housing has built more than 3,000 homes in underserved communities across the Northeast. Sarah, now 45, is a respected social entrepreneur and Ethan's mother in heart. Ethan, at 27, is the father of little Jennifer and the director of one of the country's largest affordable housing companies. The family remains close. Mrs. Miller and Mr. Miller, even in their old age, actively participate in their children's and grandchildren's lives. The apartment where Ethan grew up has been turned into a small community library. And at the original restaurant where it all began, now under new management, but still running the assistance program Sarah created, a plaque on the wall reads, "No child should have to ask for leftovers. Everyone deserves a full plate and a caring heart." Sarah and Ethan's story proves that small gestures can transform entire lives. That family is whoever chooses to love and care, and that we never know which chance encounter might change our destiny forever. The end. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story. Have you ever been in a similar situation, helping someone or being helped by a stranger? Share your experience in the comments. Do you think Sarah made the right choice by taking Ethan in? Your opinion means so much to us. Don't forget to leave your like and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.